When compared to her comic book counterpart, Andrea Harrison was butchered in AMC's adaptation of The Walking Dead. She went from being an integral member of the cast, who eventually ended up marrying Rick himself, to a character who died early from a case of plot-induced stupidity. And somewhere in between her introduction and her demise, much of the fan base came to despise her, which is honestly perplexing to me, especially when comparing her to Lori Grimes, who pretty much deserved most of the hate she got. So was Andrea really as bad as many claim, or are people just being hyperbolic? My intuition tells me that reality leans towards the latter. So in order to answer this question, we're gonna have to examine her actions throughout seasons 1, 2, and 3. And once we do that, hopefully we can learn to view Andrea in a different light. Or maybe we'll just hate her some more. With that being said, sit back and relax, because we're about to go on a trip back to the glory days of The Walking Dead. When we first meet Andrea, we see that she's a pretty aggressive woman, but she doesn't actually have it in her to actually pull the trigger on someone, even if said person is a stranger who is responsible for attracting the entire city of Atlanta to her position. She's also clearly not accustomed to handling firearms, as Rick eventually had to point out to her that her handgun had its safety pin engaged. Now, I'm gonna be blunt with all of y'all. This is not a valid reason to hate the character. That said, Andrea eventually apologizes to Rick for threatening him with a gun, which is actually very wholesome.
Sorry for the gun in your face.
People do things when they're afraid.
Not that it was entirely unjustified. It did get us into this.
If I get us out, would that make up for it?
No. But it'd be a start.
She also clearly contributes to the group, giving Rick the intel he needed in order to devise the Walker Guts technique, while also helping to gut the walkers and even carry some loot. Hell, she even volunteered to go to a walker-infested metropolis. Right off the bat, we're given the image of a character that has the potential to be an amazing survivor. And even if that potential is unrealized, at least we know she's a solid person in terms of moral fiber. This is even reinforced by the fact that she stood up to Ed the wife-beater Peltier.
I tell you what, you don't like how your laundry's done? You are welcome to pitch in and do it yourself. Here. Oh!
Ain't my job, Missy.
Andrea, don't.
What is your job, Ed? Sitting on your ass smoking cigarettes?
Well, it sure sound like listening to some uppity smart-mouth bitch. Tell you what. Come on, let's go.
I don't think she needs to go anywhere with you, Ed.
Fast forward to the Horde night, where her sister Amy dies, and she clearly doesn't handle the death of her sister that well. And you know what? This is to be expected, considering that Amy is her younger sister, and also considering that she resents herself for not spending time with her in the past.
Her birthday was always like a week-long affair. But I somehow always missed it. I was away at college or too busy for kids' parties. I'm here now, Amy. I'm here. I love you.
She wasn't there often for Amy, and now she wasn't there to save her. Combine this with the fact that her family's likely dead in Florida, and it begins to make sense why she eventually developed suicidal urges. These urges are then reinforced when Dr. Jenner educates the Atlanta group on the stark reality of the wildfire virus, being that the world as they know it is gone. Once that tidbit of information is dumped on Andrea, she makes the incredibly rational decision to opt out of life. She has no real family left, and the only real authority figure in front of her is telling her that this apocalyptic pathogen is our extinction event. As far as she knows it, there is no benefit to continued existence, but rather there is only the guarantee of needless perpetual suffering. Now, you can call her a coward for this. You can call her selfish if you'd like, but she didn't get to choose to exist. Hence, she should have the right to exit life on her terms, especially considering that she literally has no family left. And you know what, to be frank, I don't really feel like debating the ethics of self-termination in this particular video, as I briefly touched on it in my other Andrea-related video. But I do want to say that it is rather stupid to dislike her character for being suicidal in this specific instance. Walkers aren't scary to us because we know everything about them. The characters in the Walking Dead universe have never even conceived of the zombie as a concept. Hence, it makes sense as to why they would all be terrified of them. And, to be fair, if we had to deal with World War Z-styled movie zombies, most of you talking about how cowardly suicide is would, in fact, be among the first to opt out. You would all magically realize that there are fates worse than death, and that it is indeed irrational to continue existing when existence yields no real benefit. Somehow you'd be exactly where Andrea is at the end of Season 1, minus seeing your sister die in your arms and minus realizing that your entire family is dead. I dare suggest that you're a fucking moron if you hate her for this, and I'm not going to apologize for that. Sometimes the truth is just inconsiderate of your fragile sensibilities. Setting that aside, Andrea eventually starts to grapple with wanting to live again. And this starts with her yearning to possess her firearm, which Dale pretty much took from her. She even has Shane teach her how to maintain her handgun. At some point, she recognizes that Shane is becoming an outcast, just like her, and she offers him a chance to leave with someone who's willing to actually contribute to survival. With the benefit of hindsight on our side, this gesture was one which could have saved the soul of a fan-favorite character who instead became a tragic villain. Speaking of Shane, she's actually one of the few people who attempted to reach out to him, even giving him some pointers on how to better communicate his views on survival. She once again eventually finds interest in contributing to the group's survival as well. The fact that she's always willing to carry her own weight while getting her hands dirty is admirable. And as it turns out, she ends up having great aim. Andrea eventually contributes to the defense of the farm twice, with the first time being during the infamous barn incident, and the second time being during the second Horde night. Aside from Maggie, Andrea is really the only female on the cast that actually tried to actively help the group improve its survival prospects. She even brings this up, the need to prioritize group survival, when she bodied Lori in their little argument.
I'm sorry, what would you have me do?
Oh, there's plenty of work to go around.
Are you serious? Everything falls apart. You're in my face over skipping laundry?
Look, I went after Rick. I took down 2 walkers.
After
Don't act
crashing
like you
Maggie's
don't
car,
know
ever
how to take care of
apologize for
yourself.
that?
Crashing her. You're insane.
No, you are. And you're the one that's self-centered. The way you take it all for granted. About yourself. You know what? Go ahead. Go in there and tell that little girl that everything's gonna be okay, just like it is for you. She'll get a husband, a son, baby, boyfriend.
Her visceral dismantling of Lori Grimes honestly makes her goated all on its own. But I digress. Andrea, however, did get carried away with wanting to contribute, to the point that she nearly killed Daryl.
You gonna pull the trigger or what? No!
But in typical fashion, she immediately apologized and took accountability for her own actions. Speaking of Daryl, she actually belittled him in a deleted scene, which I personally consider to be canon.
What do you think? They got overrun. Something to say?
Yeah. How about observant?
Observant. Big word from a guy like you. 3 whole syllables.
Walkers didn't do this. I'd be much more worried about the people who came and did all this. Get a dictionary. Look it up. Observant.
Andrea knew she was smart and knew that other people weren't as educated as her. And sometimes that got in her head. This is a legitimate quirk of hers that is deserving of disdain. And before you ask, yes, the view from my glass house is amazing. Eventually, Andrea ends up being saved by Michonne, after she ran an all-night marathon, which is an insane cardio feat. Even though Michonne saved Andrea, Michonne implies throughout the series that Andrea saved her soul. And Michonne goes on to be an incredibly important character in the series. And this is something that a lot of people seem to overlook when they're talking about Andrea's impact on the series. Be that as it may, Andrea did fall for the governor's charm and inauthentic personality. But honestly, who could blame her? She had survived the entire winter on the road, never truly feeling safe. Woodbury was a sanctuary in a nightmarish, undead world. The governor himself was a handsome fella who could have been a possible mate for her as well. The amalgamation of Philip's dick and Woodbury's existence essentially planted the seed of purpose and meaning in her mind. which is something that we all need in order to reach self-actualization. And this is something that Andrea likely believed would never be available to her again. That is until she had arrived at Woodbury. The governor and his town were proof that the old world could return. And to be fair, Michonne did not handle the situation well. She didn't have to abandon Andrea in Woodbury. And her argument to Andrea could essentially be boiled down to, just trust me, bro. Had she presented some strong evidence, knowing damn well that Andrea used to be a fucking attorney who valued hard evidence more than anecdotal evidence, Andrea likely would have left with her, which is what she eventually does when the reality of Philip's true nature becomes impossible to deny. That being said, Philip wasn't gonna kill Michonne or Andrea if Michonne simply fell in line. She could have earned his trust over time and then she could have assassinated him. In fact, Michonne escaping is exactly what leads to Maggie and Glenn being captured by Merle, which then leads to the discovery of the prison group. Fast forward one season and we see where this eventually leads our group. So in a sense, Andrea was fucking right to want to stay, albeit for the wrong reasons. That being said, Andrea truly did care for the people of Woodbury and for her Atlanta buddies. She tried to foster a peace deal. She did earnestly try to get both sides of the story. And when she finally realized that Philip was truly evil, she attempted to return back to her friends. But she was also stupid enough to ignore glaring red flags. Flags which were so vibrantly crimson that ignoring them was definitely deserving of hate. She saw the man's Walkerhead collection and still chose to see the best in him. She learned about Maggie and Glenn and still tried to reconcile that fact with her perception of Philip. And when she finally realized he needed to die, she could not bring herself to assassinate him, an act which could have prevented many deaths. Now, she did outsmart him during the hunt, but she was foolish enough to not confirm the kill, which led to her being captured and subsequently killed. Speaking of her death, Andrea probably could have survived had she not spent valuable time speaking with Milton. Had she simply shut her fucking mouth and locked the fuck in, she likely could have freed herself and terminated Milton before he turned. Ironically, her good intentions and empathetic nature is eventually what got her killed. And while I can get angry and annoyed at her for being so naive, I cannot hate her for it, because deep down she was a good person. And hating someone good merely for being good is just fucking stupid.
I just didn't want anyone to die.
Oh, and I almost forgot, but she actually sided with wanting to terminate Randall, which is what I viewed as being the correct decision given the group's circumstances at the farm, and also given what we knew about little Randy. But then she changed her mind, so I guess we can count that against her as well. All things being considered, she didn't sleep with her best friend's spouse. She didn't try to kill her best friend just for the sake of fucking their spouse and having their child call her mommy. She didn't needlessly sacrifice anyone or get them killed. That is until she failed to assassinate Philip. She actually contributed to the group's survival, or at the very minimum, tried to contribute to said effort. She definitely didn't hide a pregnancy from someone. She didn't emotionally abuse or sexually assault anyone either. She was always honest with people and always apologized when she fucked up. You know what? I cannot understand where the majority of the hate stems from. The vast majority of it is simply undeserving and totally disproportionate to the sins she's committed as a character. And I'd hate to say this about the fan base, but the hate she's garnered only leaves me with two reasonable hypotheses. The first being that some viewers are just fucking stupid, and the second being that many of these fans are just terminally online, red-pilled incels who haven't touched grass, let alone a real vagina, in their entire lives. Which explains why they tend to dislike only the female characters, while then being uber fans of actual demons. She gets Lori levels of hate, yet she is nowhere near as bad as Lori. Why? Please, someone tell me, enlighten me. Like, yeah, she was an opinionated blonde chick. And yes, she made some fantastically stupid mistakes. But I don't see how one can justify hating the character. For fuck's sake, she's even attractive as hell. There was so much potential with her character. And you know what? It's a shame that they killed her off for shock value. And I think, perhaps, the hate stems more from the direction the writers took with her, more so than her actual character. And if that's really the case, you'd be stupid to hate her. Take your wrath out on the writers if that's really the case. Andrea did not deserve the vast majority of the hate that she's garnered. Period. Anyways, if you like this sort of content, please like, share, and fucking subscribe. Also remember that you may opine anytime if you feel so inclined, down in the comments section. I'm Captain Gold, and I hope to see you in my next Gold Standard video.